Have you ever asked to your parents how much things used to cost when they were younger? If so, they informed you that houses, cars, and food used to be significantly cheaper. And this is correct. Most items do tend to get increasingly expensive over time. This is due to a phenomenon known as inflation. Today, we will analyze and discuss two basic financial concepts: inflation and deflation, their types, benefits, and consequences. In the classroom, we help people in understanding personal financial, economics, and investing fundamentals. If you want to improve your financial future, subscribe and hit the like button if you find this video beneficial. First, what's inflation? Inflation is simply the rise in the prices of goods and services. Or, in other words, the buying power of your money decreases when there is inflation. Consider how much you paid for a candy bar when you were a kid. How much the same candy bar costs now? How much it cost to rent in your area in the 1970s? How much it would cost now? Well, that price level increase is exactly what inflation is. The price of milk is one of the simplest examples of inflation in action. A gallon of milk cost nearly 36 cents per gallon in 1922. Same gallon of milk cost $4 in 2022, 11 times more than it did 100 years ago. This rise is not due to milk being harder to find or more expensive to produce. Instead, this price indicates the progressive decline of money's worth due to inflation. Now, there are two basic types of inflation: demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. Demand pull inflation occurs when total demand of goods and services exceeds total supply. When consumer demand rises, demand pull inflation begins. Sellers will often respond to this rise by raising their production to match demand. However, when demand exceeds supply, dealers will raise their prices as a response. This sort of price increase is known as demand pull inflation, and it is the most typical type of inflation. On the other hand, cost push inflation occurs when the aggregate supply of specific goods and services decreases, usually because of rising manufacturing costs, raw material costs, or labor costs. Examples of cost pull inflation will be rising in oil prices, minimal wages, import prices, food and energy prices, and corporate taxes. What are the benefits and consequences of inflation? When the general price level rises for a while, it's known as inflation. High inflation rates are often seen to be harmful to an economy. Inflationary pressures cause uncertainty and decrease the value of the dollar. Most central banks, on the other hand, aim for a 2% inflation rate, implying that low inflation has a few benefits for the economy. Some economists even suggest that during periods of economic stagnation, we should aim for a greater inflation rate. Some of the advantages of inflation include adjustment of wages, adjustment of relative prices, boost economic growth, and benefits to borrowers. When a borrower pays an interest rate that is lower than the rate of inflation, the borrower benefits. This is because the true dollar value returned by the borrower is less than the total amount of money borrowed. On the other side, inflation is normally considered a concern when the rate of inflation exceeds 2%. The situation becomes more serious as inflation rises. Hyperinflation, in severe cases, could wipe out people's savings and create a lot of instability. Some of the consequences of inflation could be reduction in value of savings, consumer prices raise, fixed income groups and paid employees see a decrease in purchasing power if salaries do not keep pace with retail price increases. Who and how does the inflation rate get measured? The Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, produces the Consumer Price Index, CPI, which is the most generally used indicator of inflation. Every month, the BLS polls 23,000 companies and records the prices of 80,000 products to show the changes in goods and services. In addition, the BLS utilizes the Consumer Expenditure Survey, a survey to American families, to select which goods belong in the basket. as well as how much weighting to allocate to each item. Different costs are weighted based on their importance to the average customer. These are some categories: retail, transportation, gas prices, healthcare, food, housing, education. What about deflation? When the supply of products exceeds the demand for those goods and/or services, deflation or negative inflation occurs. This usually occurs because people have less money or credit than they did previously. Prices of consumer products and services decline because of this. There are two basic types of deflation: deflation by lower cost and deflation by low demand. With deflation by lower cost, some of the benefits are cheaper prices, increasing productivity, earnings, and hopefully higher real wages. In theory, businesses will be able to pay higher salary if there is deflation due to lower costs. If customers see reduced costs as their actual salary rise, you may anticipate them to spend more because they will have the money to purchase these cheaper goods. On the other side, we have deflation by low demand. If we have this type of deflation, prices will start to fall due to low demand, then businesses' revenue will fall. Businesses will aim to lower salaries rather than raise them in this situation. Additionally, if employers are unable to reduce nominal wages, we may expect an increase in unemployment. As a result, reducing prices will not be enough to drive spending and increased consumption in this environment of lower income and higher unemployment. People will instead be risk-averse, striving to save and expecting for prices to fall much more. Let us do a recap of what you have learned so far. Inflation is simply the rise in the prices of goods and services. There are two basic types of inflation: demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. Advantages of inflation include adjustment of wages, adjustment of relative prices, boost economic growth, and benefits to borrowers. Some of consequences for inflation could be reduction in value of savings, consumer prices raise, fixed income groups, and paid employees. Inflation causes unequal distribution of wealth, while deflation decreases investments and causes unemployment. The Consumer Price Index, CPI, is the most generally used indicator of inflation. Deflation occurs when the supply of products exceeds the demand for those goods and/or services. In summary, both inflation and deflation are inevitable and necessary, but they must be kept in check by the central banks. If that does not happen, they may create serious trouble. Did you know about inflation and deflation earlier? How will you handle inflation and deflation? Don't be shy to comment right below in the comment section. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to watch more insightful videos about business and personal finance. Thanks for watching the classroom.